I see him coming in right there. We're going to bring in our guest. It is Brady Weiler. Brady, we appreciate you taking the time today, man. He is with the Thursday Night Podcast. He's going to talk about Georgia State with us a little bit. Brady, appreciate it, man. How you doing today?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think we're all really excited for actual football to be played and be done with the offseason chatter and just get to actual gridiron action. I'm definitely in that camp.
Definitely, man. And the podcast you guys do is great. I was actually looking for some Georgia State content to get my background information on this game. Maybe last week before, was in the car for a while, and I stumbled upon y'all. I listened. By the way, if anybody else wants to go check it out, go to Thursday Night Podcast. They've got a offensive preview, a defensive preview, like whole 9 yards. If you want to like really know everything about this Georgia State team, they got you covered. So Brady, I guess for fans who have not listened to your full roster breakdown, what is the first thing a Gamecock fan needs to know about this team coming into Williams-Brice Stadium if they haven't paid attention to anything else so far?
Well, I guess you've got some familiarity with Coach Elliott. Obviously, he was there since 2010 to 2016 before becoming the head coach at Georgia State. And in his introductory press conference as head coach at Georgia State, the first thing he was emphasizing was, we're going to run the ball. And that's the thing he's wanted to instill since he got in Atlanta. And that's been the case. And they were a top 10 FBS rushing unit last year. They've been over 200 yards each of the last 3 years. And it's the identity that they've taken on is what he's wanted to bring in. And he basically rebuilt the offensive line and the defensive line to where you could really make the case that those are the two best units on this Georgia State team. And so you're going to see that play out to where make no mistake about it. They're not going to disguise it. They're going to want to come into Williams-Brice and run the football and assert themselves in that way. And that's just the makeup of this Georgia State team.
Brady, thanks for taking the time to join us, man. Great job with the podcast and everything that you guys do. It's been real helpful for us as we've been preparing and kind of scouting on our own this team to talk about this matchup. I know we want to talk about some of the kind of new on this team and what they'll do, but I want to go back to last season. It's not always super relevant, but this is a team that returns a lot of starters, right? And they have some different coaches, new offensive coordinator, but last year, it looks like Georgia State started off a little slow, right? And maybe some of that was competition level. They had some tough losses to North Carolina, App State. But then you look at the end of the year, they beat Troy, worse than South Carolina did. They beat Coastal in an upset. They seem like they were playing their best ball later in the year. What do you attribute that to? And is there reason to believe that they can carry over the way they were playing last year to the beginning of this season?
Yeah, so like you say, there was the competition factor. They played a good Army team. They played a good North Carolina team, or a decent North Carolina team who was really angry after losing to Virginia Tech the week before. And I think Georgia State bore the brunt of that in that game. But I think it was a UNC team that was wanting to show they were better than that. And sometimes that's the way the schedule shakes out. But the other part of it, aside from just who they were playing, is that Darren Granger became the starting quarterback for full-time at the ULM game on October 9th. He started against Charlotte and he started against Auburn, played Auburn. They were still giving Quad Brown a chance, and he ended up playing a lot of that App State loss they played. And full-time, it was Darren from that ULM game, and he just kind of solidified everything. It's a guy, personality-wise, that the team gravitated towards. I think guys were happy he got the starting job because he'd worked hard for it. And on the football side of stuff, he trusted himself to run, and the quarterback running is a big factor of what this offense wants to do. And there were times where maybe Quad Brown was making the wrong read, not pulling it when he should have, and Darren was a lot more comfortable with that side of running the Georgia State offense. And he just wasn't a quarterback that was going to lose you games. And as just an example of that, from that ULM game I talked about, the team was plus 11 in the turnover margin. He had 4 picks overall on the year, and only one of them was a real, he was forcing a throw. And it was the Auburn game when they were down 3 late. And that was when you have to force a throw. That's where you risk a pick because you have to get downfield and get either a field goal to win it or a field goal to tie, a touchdown to win it. And so the offense just kind of solidified, didn't hurt itself. And when you're doing that, when you run the ball as well as Georgia State does, it was just better, and then you got better defensive performance as well. And the other part of the turnover margin was the defense forced 17 turnovers from that ULM game on. And so you had opportunistic defense combined with an offense that wasn't going to hurt itself. And they just got past a lot of teams by just playing clean football.
Darren Granger, one of 20 kids from the state of South Carolina on this team, a Conway kid. I think I saw him play in high school. I know I saw Quay White play in high school from Greer, a guy South Carolina actually sort of recruited a little bit, almost offered. I think maybe late they were involved there. But I guess let's stay with Granger a little bit there, Brady. What is the next step for him as a quarterback? And then how much designed run game do you anticipate from him, this season, certainly this week? Is that going to be something where it's more like, okay, he can use his legs when he needs to, or does Sean Elliott sort of implement that by design as well? So, yeah, run game from QB, and what is his next step as a quarterback as he goes now into his first full year, but second overall year kind of being the guy?
Yeah, so I guess start with the run game factor. There's definitely going to be a couple of design QB draws here or there, but a lot of it is going to be option stuff where it's zone read or actual triple option concepts, where he's going to have to make the choice, read the defensive lineman who's his guy, make whether he needs to hand it off or take it. And so there's going to be a lot of that. He also is a guy who will make a play. There was one play in the Auburn game last year where he was completely dead to rights in the backfield, no business making a play, should have been a big loss. And he just willed his way past a couple of the charging defensive linemen from Auburn, got past the first down marker. And so really, I'd say it's everything. And he is the type of guy that when the play breaks down, you can trust that he can maybe make something out of it, even when everything is going bad on his feet. The improvement that you want to see from him this year, Georgia State fans want to see from him, is a little more consistency in the passing game, a little bit more of a deep threat in the passing game, because Taylor Williams got a 66-yard touchdown late when the App State game was over. And that was the only catch over 40 yards any wide receiver had in 2021 for Georgia State. So there's a desire that because the offense is going to have so much consistency week in, week out with getting the yards they want on the ground, if there's a deep threat and there's a big play explosiveness from the passing game, that's going to unlock so much for the offense. And it's going to get another level. And that's both with him and just everyone involved in the offense with the passing game, looking for more there. But on Saturday, I think what you'll see from new offensive coordinator Trent McKnight is maybe trying to get Darren comfortable early, get him some easy passes, some ones where he doesn't have to make a decision, where it's just, whether it's out in the flat or whether it's just a quick read where he doesn't have to think too much, get him comfortable. And then maybe you see them unlock a little bit more from there. But yeah, I think what the rushing offense is going to be for you. And it's just about the passing game being more of a threat, because there is the danger if you're too one-dimensional, the teams are going to start stacking the box against you. And then the run game becomes less effective. You become less effective. And that's where things start going downhill.
Brady, sticking with the offensive side of the ball, and Wes just put up a picture of Jamaica Williams, former Gamecock, who, of course, is one of, I guess, 3 running backs. Tucker Gregg's one. The other name escapes me. I'm sure you can back me up there. But tell us a little bit about, how they split those guys. My recollection is on the depth chart, I think 3 oars, right? Between their 3 running backs. Tell us a little bit about the different strengths of those guys, how they may split the carries, and also, if you can, loop in a little bit of any differences that we may see offensively, since there is, some newness there on the coaching staff.
Yeah, so it really is a running back by committee situation where led mostly by Tucker Gregg and Jam, like you're talking about. Marcus Carroll is the third guy who he's been a little bit behind the depth chart, but he had a really good spring and fall, and the coaches are really excited about where he's gotten to. And so I feel like reading into that, we'll see 23 out there as well, getting some carries, but they try and keep everyone they have the ability, because they have multiple guys, that it's not going to be anyone as the number 1 running back getting like 30 carries a game. They like to keep everyone fresh. There were a couple games last year where Jam, being as quick as he is, they held him back to where, like in the fourth quarter, specifically the Charlotte game, there was a long, like 10-minute drive where Jam hadn't played that much, and he came in fresh against a pretty gassed Charlotte defense. And it looked like he was running a different speed as everyone else, just because he had his legs under him and the offensive line had wore down the front of Charlotte. And so there is an ability there, because Tucker is kind of the traditional smash mouth, tough yards, short yardage situation back, although he had 2 50-yard runs against Auburn. So it's not just a one-trick pony there. But Jam's got the speed. And I think the thing that he has gotten better at as he's gotten more reps at running back is he's gotten some, not just shiftiness, but toughness. He'll shed some tackles. And he's become a really complete back in a way that maybe when we saw him join the running back room, it was like, all right, we know he came from South Carolina. He's got speed. He's an athlete, but he's definitely developed a lot as running back to where I really don't know who's going to be the leading rusher this year. It's going to come down to who pops some more long runs, because I think Jam's got as much of a shot as Tucker Gregg has got. And then, Trent McKnight, like you mentioned, new OC. I think there's a hope because he was the wide receivers coach. And if the staff change that was the original one with Josh Stepp being OC, it stuck, he was going to be passing game coordinator. In addition to that, when Coach Stepp left for Louisville, they just, Coach Elliott made Trent McKnight the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. I think there's a hope that he can bring in some more ideas to the wide receiver, to the passing game, because that is where the ceiling could be raised with this offense. But like I said at the start, like, it's still Coach Elliott's team. It's still his mold, and he's going to want it to be a run first. It's still going to be, 60-40 run, 65-35 run. I think the hope is just that as he comes in as a new voice, maybe some new ideas, new ways of getting those big explosive plays in the passing game, that's what you're hoping for. And we'll all find out together on Saturday, see if there's some of those new concepts that have been installed for this year's team.
Brady, real quick before we go over to the defensive side, another local guy here for us, KZ Adams. I know, obviously, from what we just talked about, there is depth in the running back room. Is there room for him to make an impact this year as well, you think, or maybe on special teams? Like, are those opportunities there? Is he a guy? Have you heard anything about maybe him being too good to keep off the field? I actually, interestingly enough, I watched him play in the state championship game while Sean Elliott was on the sideline for the entire game, watching him as well. And I got to think, watching him play some in high school, this kid eventually, even as a freshman, is probably going to find a way to impact you guys. Just incredible athlete, very quick, very shifty. Have you heard anything about his opportunities for this season?
Yeah, so he enrolled early and went through spring practice after graduating high school. And in the spring scrimmage at the end of spring practice, multiple people, Coach Elliott, a couple of the players who we talked to after the game, raved about him. Coach Elliott said he ran for something like 230 yards in their first scrimmage in the spring. And wow. Players just making they had seen his numbers, and his numbers are astounding. I think 3,400 yards his senior year, 40 touchdowns on the ground just by himself. I mean, obviously a playmaker, and it showed in a way that I think even college guys are like, all right, this guy's got these numbers, but he's coming into college, like, it's different. And he impressed them right off the jump. And so I think he's a little bit blocked. I think they trust the guys that are running back. So week one, I don't know how much we'll see him at running back. If that's the case, they've been holding him back, and it's been a little, trump card they've been holding in their pocket. But maybe on special teams as the season goes on, and definitely down the road. I think even from next year, if he isn't that much a factor this year, he's going to be a guy that it's like, how did all these other schools let him slip? Because he played small school in South Carolina. I think the numbers are a little bit of a factor of that, but I think, and he's a little undersized, but I think it's one of those diamonds in the rough that I think the coaching staff's really happy they have. Whether it's as a true freshman in game one this Saturday, I don't know, but definitely a guy that there's some excitement about in the program. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we got the KZ Adams stuff here. Well, I'm a little late getting the video up, but there it is if anybody wants to watch it. Chris, you're muted, by the way, bud.
I pressed the button. I apologize. So while we watch some KZ Adams film, to switch directions and go to defense, right? So Georgia State has, Wes was saying before you came on, Brady, it seems like they set a bunch of school records, and then the year after they broke their own school records, maybe a few times over. Tackles for loss, sacks, you'll have a better handle on that than us. But tell us about why they've been successful in that vein on defense, and then what style can South Carolina fans expect? Is this more of an attacking defense? Is there some exotic stuff that's going to get thrown at them? What are they going to see in the stands on Saturday night?
Yeah, so first off, sack record was broken the last two seasons in 2020 and 2021. Tackles for loss record was broken last year, and they tied the previous one in 2020. So definitely they've taken a step up, and it starts with the guys they've added in the front. Thomas Gore, Javon Dennis. They lost Dante Wilson, who had been the nose tackle basically since Coach Elliott got here. He's able to stay on for next year because of the COVID eligibility. But Thomas Gore was his backup last year, and they ended up having to move him to one of the defensive end spots because they just couldn't keep him off the field. He just kept making plays. This is a guy who's playing nose tackle and defensive end, and he was 5th on the team in tackles. Guy that just kept showing up, and he's going to be one of the focal points up front. But more than that, it's just there's a deep bench there. And yeah, I mean, I think attacking, opportunistic is a good word. It's a team that is employing the old cliche bend but don't break on defense, where they're looking to not give up the big plays and they trust their defense to keep teams out of the end zone if they do that. And just as an example of that, in that Auburn game last year, Auburn started one of their drives plus 30, like at the 28 maybe after a kick return, and had to settle for a field goal. And all over that winning streak at the end of last season, there were times where they maybe get a play that was a big play, but it wasn't a touchdown play. It wasn't a total home run. It was just team got a chunk play, and the defense would just lock it down once they got into plus territory. And so that's what they're going for. They're not big, and some of that's a factor of the G5 level, but it's also by design. You know, defensive coordinator Nate Fuqua wants to use speed as a plus for his front. He wants to have guys that may be a little undersized, maybe smaller, but they can use their speed to where they're shooting gaps in the linebacker core, or they're just beating guys to spots when they're doing run defense, to the point where the run defense was one of the best in the Sun Belt this past year. And I think it's going to be, I know I was watching before I came on and you guys talking about hoping to see, you know, in the trenches. And I think you will get a good test on both sides, because it's a different front than what you're going to see when you're playing your Georgias and your Clemsons, your power conference defenses that are stout against the run. But it's been an effective unit because they're able to use their team speed and swarming to the ball to get short gains. And when they give up the big plays, when they're going well, they're not letting it be touchdown plays, and they're bucking up at that point, stopping teams from getting in the end zone, forcing turnovers as well.
Yeah, Brady, we've kind of talked all offseason here for South Carolina. Their points of emphasis. I mean, stopping the run was a big issue for them last year. And you go into a game where obviously you're talking about a Georgia State team that wants to run the football, as you said, and it's kind of, proven they can. So I think we do learn quite a bit about South Carolina this week. Probably learn quite a bit about Georgia State as well, even though it's just one game. So let's dive into that very thing, the actual game itself. I know the areas we're going to be paying attention to. Give us the Georgia State view. What are kind of the keys to this game? Kind of how do you see this thing playing out from a game flow standpoint? What does Georgia State need to do to pull the upset?
Well, I mean, the first thing is it's all good in saying they've been a good running team, and they've done it the last 2 times they've gone to an SEC school, but they do have to still go line up Saturday and do it. And I think if they're able to run the ball on offense like they're trying to do, and if they're able to prevent the turnovers like as they've been going well the last year, have been able to do, they'll stay around. Like, I don't know that it'll be a game they're front running from, or whether it's they're just a touchdown behind and hanging, but like, if they're able to do what they come in to do, it'll be a game late, and that'll be, it'll be the age old who makes the plays when it counts thing. I think the one place you'd look out for with Georgia State is, Spencer Rattler's coming in. There's a lot of expectation, and obviously a really quality recruit out of high school, looking for a new start here in South Carolina. And he's definitely got the talent, and we're aware of just all the different weapons there are in the South Carolina pass catching realm. And so Georgia State been making sack records the last couple of years. When you're blitzing a lot and when you're sending pressure, or just when you're trying to get to quarterback and you're not, any secondary is going to struggle past 5-6 seconds of coverage. And so if South Carolina is able to prevent the pass rush, able to get anything going in the run game to where Georgia State's taking a little bit out of that factor as well, that's where it'll get a little bit dicey. And so I think the biggest thing for Georgia State is just preventing any super home run plays with a passing game, which is going to be tough. Like, that is going to be the marker for this game. And it might be where South Carolina has some success, but I think that's where, especially early, if South Carolina gets the lead early, Georgia State's playing from a couple possessions behind. It's just not something they're designed to do because of how they run the ball. It's just not where they want to be. It's not exactly like a triple option team, but it's kind of the similar vein where it just, where they're designed is when they're able to keep on their script and run the ball. And if they get behind, that's where it's going to get a little bit dicey. And South Carolina has definitely got the big play potential in the pass catching. Those tight ends, I think, would be a particular area just because middle of the field, there's been some opportunities other teams have taken advantage of, and it's going to be a test for, the linebackers, the safeties, slot corners if they get lined up on one of those tight ends. So that's where I would say if things are going to go wrong for Georgia State and early, that would be where just giving up some big chunks in the passing game, letting Rattler settle in. Because the other side of it is, I was at the game last year in Auburn. Bo Nix started getting booed in like the second quarter of that game. And the crowd that was really near sellout, which was a plus for the SEC team, turns into a negative when everyone starts getting antsy. And I think Georgia State would love to live in that zone where the longer the game moves on and it's close, the crowd's as tight and it leads into the team, and you've got a guy playing his first game for a new school. I think that's where it hinges. And if South Carolina takes care of the business in the pass game and gets some big plays, they'll probably be able to take control of that factor. But that's, I think, where Georgia State, it's going to go one way or the other. I think that might be where it goes.
Yeah. We were actually joking about that earlier of, if South Carolina, let's say they get the ball first and they go 3 and out, there's going to be some antsy fans in Williams-Brice Stadium, as you said. Brady, I got a couple more for you. Here's my first one. Looking back at, since some of the personnel is the same from last season, looking back at Auburn, looking back at North Carolina last year, the Power 5 teams that Georgia State played, something that Marcus Satterfield said, the offensive coordinator for South Carolina, was, from a size perspective, they'll be undersized relative to South Carolina, but they're very quick. He said that the team had elite speed, I think he called it. How did they match up on the lines of scrimmage in those games, from what you saw last season? Because there may be, something to take away from that for this year too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where Tank Bigsby, great running back, and Georgia State, I think, held him under 100 yards, held him well under what he was getting against some other, good SEC defenses. And that was the factor in the first half, that Georgia State wasn't giving up the big play in passing game, and we're getting Bo Nix uncomfortable in the passing game. And the running game, they were getting chunks here or there, but it wasn't ever huge runs, and they're keeping him out of the end zone, holding him to field goals. And so, North Carolina game, the passing game, there were some big touchdowns early, and especially the running game just with Sam Howell. Sam Howell got free. I think he got a 66-yard rushing touchdown where he just completely broke contain, ran right into where, other guys had their backs turned because they were covering receivers. And that was maybe the biggest takeaway from that game defensively, is just like they let a guy who isn't really a running threat at quarterback just kill them and get 100 yards, get a couple of rushing touchdowns. Like, that's not how they were supposed to beat you. And so that was maybe the factor that you weren't counting on in that game, that it got a little away from you. But neither of those teams really did what they wanted to do running the ball. And I think that's the thing. Georgia State, even though they're undersized, like, they think that they can handle themselves on the ground. I guess North Carolina had 201 yards, 503 a carry, which is pretty decent, but not like that wasn't what killed you. And like I said, about half of that at least was Sam Howell, which you just can't let happen. Auburn was 166 on the ground. They gave up 200 rushing yards 4 times, and one of those was Army, who ran it 67 times and for 258 yards, which the offense didn't really give them a chance in that game. And Army is going to just get 200 yards on you on the ground anytime you play them. Like, that is just what they do. And so the number there that matters to me is there was 3.85 yards per carry, which, all things considered, when the offense didn't really give you a chance in that one, holding Army to that, not real efficiency running the ball, not giving up those big plays. I think they're going to go into this game expecting they can at least keep everything in check in the run game. And that's going to be where it's, going to rely on making sure they're not giving up too big of plays in the pass game. But like we said, they're undersized, but it's not all just because of the recruiting. Like, they do have a style that they want to get on defense, and it relies on having guys they know can just win to spots and use stunts in the pass rush to confuse and get advantages that way.
Brady, last one that I've got for you before we let you run, man. I know you got a lot to do. If I'm not mistaken, Georgia State breaking in a new kicker, right?
Yes, he was the punter last year. He'll be doing everything this year.
Okay. South Carolina's in a similar situation. They had Parker White, who's super reliable. They haven't given a lot of detail here about they've got 2 guys, and all they've said is, hey, somebody's going to go out there and kick. So if it's a tight game, little storyline to watch there, even on kickoffs. But how does the special teams situation look there? And they do have a new special teams coach at Georgia State.
Yeah. So Noel Ruiz transferred from NCAA. He was on the team last 2 years as the kicker, and I think Coach Elliott definitely appreciated the stability they had there because he came in and was Mr. Reliable, basically anything within 50, and he even had a leg beyond 50. They really trusted him on. Now, I think they tried a couple of transfers this past offseason. No one ended up coming through, but I think they like Michael Hayes. Our concern, and we talked about this in our pod, is just when you have a guy doing kickoffs and punts and place kicking, like that is just a lot for one guy to have to do through the course of the season. And so that's maybe the one thing to watch, but I think it's, he's a guy they trust where if they're going to have to kick a field goal, they're going to put him out there, be comfortable. And, with that said, there's definitely multiple times last couple of seasons as Coach Elliott's really been able to trust his run game that if it's 4th and something manageable in plus territory, I think it's more than a coin flip that they're going to go for it. And that's nothing to do with the kicker. That's just what Coach Elliott, he trusts his guys. You're 4th and 1. I think you're going to see them line up to go for it. And everyone's going to know Tucker Greg's going to be getting the ball. And it's a thing where even though everyone knows what the play is going to be, it's been a really successful point for Georgia State where they just trust their blocking. They trust Tucker to run that hard yard and get it. And so it might be less of a factor in the sense that if there's any kind of leeway where he can talk himself into going for it, I think you might see that not just because of, it's playing the SEC team, just that's part of his personality that he likes to be a little bit aggressive in plus territory like that, especially if it's a manageable situation where he can hand it off.
Brady, great stuff, man. Again, we appreciate you taking the time today. And if you can, go ahead and give the Gamecock fans some direction. How can they go check out the podcast? Maybe they want to listen rolling into the game rolling into Columbia on game day on Saturday. How can they find you?
Yeah, so we're on Twitter at Thursday Night with the E instead of the U. Panthers Thursday. Every day is Thursday.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
there it is. I meant to ask.
That's connection. Yeah, that's the connection. It's Thursday. And we're I think I heard you plug at the beginning. We're on any podcast source everyone goes to. The posts on a SoundCloud if you want to go directly to the source. I'm on Twitter, Brady M. Weiler, and I'll be there covering the game on Saturday, giving the Georgia State perspective on stuff. And just through the year, yeah, we're on giving another voice to the Georgia State sphere. I think when we started this, there wasn't really a podcast like what we would have listened to. And we just kind of felt, why not us? Let's just go do it. And it's kind of been a journey for us to get here where we're being the voice that we wanted to see in the Georgia State media sphere. And it's been a nice place to be at.
Definitely, man. Y'all, like I said, y'all definitely do a great job, man. We appreciate the time today and enjoy the game on Saturday. Okay. Let us know if you need some restaurant recommendations. We'll get you hooked up. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks, Brady. That is again, Brady Weiler. Go check him out at the Thursday Night Podcast. Excuse me. I meant to ask him, Chris, what the Thursday, and it's for Panthers. So
yeah, we were talking about that yesterday. I'd actually figured it out before the show and was gonna.
You did figure it out.
I did, because I was like, all right, what is this Thurs? And then I was just like, oh, Panthers. I was like, that's got to be it.
I think they used to play a lot of Thursday night games too. So it was like a tie-in there. Panthers, Thursday night games.
Makes total sense.
Okay. Was that obvious or no?
No. It wasn't at first.
Okay.
I mean, when you told me the name of the podcast, I think that was yesterday on Wednesday, I was like, what does that even mean? But then I saw it written out today. I think it was like first or second time. I was like, oh, Thursday.
Your brain got it?
The brain got it. I had written out Panthers a few times today. So I think it was just top of mind. I did feel dumb for a minute, though. And I figured it out. I was like, oh. And I feel like I don't know as much about the Gamecocks even as Brady knows about Georgia State. I think he's got it all pretty under control over there.
Well, hey, I wasn't just like blowing smoke when I was coming back from, where was I coming back from? Augusta. And I was like, I've got to learn something about this team. And that's what I stumbled upon. And good stuff. They gave the full offense, defense, special teams.